to The Crumbling, a podcast about how disinformation has done to our sense of reality what that horse did to a guy called Mr. Hands. Mr. Hands was unfixable, but I think maybe we could possibly unfuck our sense of reality because it tends to be more pliable than a butthole. I'm Sophia Florence, and these are my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Devon. I'm horrified that you made that reference.
I'm Andrew Hands. I think it's kind of fucked up that you were speaking of my family like this. I guess being unfuckable runs in the family, though. I'm an incel. What is happening? What the fuck kind of intro is that?
I don't think Mr. Hands was unfuckable. He just...
not anymore.
Why the fuck? What's going to be the next one? The Two Girls, One Cup intro?
Was Mr. Hands...
Choudhry, and I am the host of Two Girls, One Cup. To New York.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we were going to introduce our guest, Annam Choudhry, but I love... That is the best intro that anyone has ever fucking given. She's our special guest tonight. She's a brilliant comedian, someone who also has a good knowledge of science and has done some work in science education. According to one of my favorite stand-up bits from her, she's the Muslim Sweeney Todd. And so, give her a warm welcome. And by that, I mean air horns.
Oh, we really had air horns.
Yeah.
I was a little slow on the draw, and also the volume was turned down on them. But you know what? That's the kind of show we run here.
Period. Thank you for watching my set. That was a brand new joke I had done about the Muslim Sweeney Todd. Glad you liked it.
I don't know anything about it.
Can you give a good fade then?
I know. This is about me accidentally feeding my family 50 mini pies on Thanksgiving that were full of lard, and my family's Muslim, so they all ate pork by accident.
I need to see Sweeney Todd because there's some layers to this. I was thinking it was a movie about a guy who cuts hair.
No, he cuts people into meat.
He is technically a barber, but he uses the shtick to kill people and get meat so that the lady that he lives with can have meat for her meat pies. And then he sells them and has a really great business because of him. But nobody knows what they're eating is their neighbors.
Sick. I have been getting into cannibalism recently. I ate 5 guys today.
Nice. Honestly, kind of gay.
You don't know what part I ate. I ate the biceps and the spleen.
You ate out 5 guys? That's crazy. That's a lot. That's a lot of guys to eat out.
Look, I'm a giver, okay?
That's very generous of you.
I am a generous lover.
All right, so we have a question for Annam for just to kind of start things off.
I would like to ask you this. With your experience teaching in the past, have you had to cover the topic of climate change?
Oh, yeah, every year.
And how do you deal with the fact that it's a hoax?
So I've been teaching for 7 years, but I've been teaching climate change for 6. I used to teach,
wow.
Yeah, because they learned it in 8th grade, and I started teaching 8th grade 6 years ago.
And since you've taught in both red states and blue states, did you find that there was a difference in the curriculum of what you were allowed to cover?
No, because I was in the progressive part of a red state, so they didn't shut out. They wanted us to teach kids that it was caused by humans. But there was something in the curriculum that I was teaching where it was oh, look at what humans do. How do we minimize human impact? And there was a hint of 1 year, not every year, but 1 year there was a curriculum that I had to follow because it kind of changes every few years. But 1 year I had to follow it, and it was very those eco-fascists that are oh, we need to decrease the human population. That's what the questions were hinting towards. They wanted students to come up with their own answers, but the questions implied an answer that required fewer human beings to be alive. And I was this is weird. I'm not going to teach that.
I truly love the best that the ultra rich can offer. Raising our taxes out of the question. What if we killed a percentage of you?
Much easier. So much easier than giving up money.
Mm-hmm.
We're like squids and games.
Separately? No, definitely not. You combine the two? I'm listening.
All right. Going from there, I'll just kind of recap where we've been so far. So we talked about some of the initial work in climate change, starting with Arrhenius, in the 1800s to the girl with Foot in her name, and even Exxon doing some early work, in the early 1900s prior to, where that all goes. And we talked about the disinformation campaigns and the desire for the petroleum industry to buy up government functions that do research and either shut it down or use it to obfuscate and do explicitly pro-fossil fuel research, and big air quotes for the word research there, because conjecture and speculation with no data or real information isn't fucking research. And I guess that's a hot take, but not as hot as our planet's about to be. So this part of the story is going to be a little brief, and I know we covered most of the 1900s right up to the 1990s, but I'd like to bridge the gap between scene than it now. And obviously we could talk about some low-hanging fruit and like really focus on stuff like Fox News, and we'll definitely weave in and out of that domain, and we'll certainly chat about them more later in this episode. For now, if you want some background information on Fox News and how it started and what its purposes were, you should check out the documentary Outfoxed, Rupert Murdoch's War on Journalism from 2004, and the Rise of Fox News series from the podcast Slow Burn, which is from Slate. Both of those are some incredible background information on that topic, but I'd rather dive into one of my favorite topics, corporate money trying to fuck around with the scientific process.
Personally, I'm for it. I think if you get to be rich enough, you should be allowed to dictate how us regular people live our lives.
Did we ever think that maybe our planet's going through its bad bitch era? That's why it's heating up. Like Jupiter's out there.
Hot girl.
Maybe our planet's about to get hot Earth summer. Hey, maybe we deserve a baddie planet.
Planets work on the cycles of a planet are much different from the cycles comparing that to human time. What if the planet right now is in the point in its life cycle where it's going through puberty? What if the planet is like starts breaking out, getting acne? You know, what if the Earth got its first boner, dude? That'd be embarrassing.
So actually, you're not so far off. Like
I'm so fucking smart.
The Earth has cycles. I don't know if you guys covered this on the show yet, but like we have a cycle. We go through periods of warmings and global ice ages. Whenever we go through a warming period, right, the amount of carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere at the same time as the temperature is increasing. That's how we know those two are connected. That's how we discovered greenhouse gases. But like at some point, it starts to come down, but we've been accelerating further than we ever have in the past. Well, our data only goes back like 500,000 years. We've shot past 500,000 years ago worth of carbon dioxide.
Well, yeah, 500,000 years ago, there was no such thing as the United States of America. Now that the United States is here, we're number one, okay? We're going to do it the fastest. We're going to do it the best. We're going to do it with the most guns and the most freedom. What's up?
I got a second question, though, because that was a great breakdown of some really boring science stuff. What's your favorite way to describe the scientific process for students? And do you ever talk about it when you're doing your comedy?
I don't talk about the carbon cycle in my comedy.
Yet.
But yet. It's weird. I'm a science teacher, but I talk mostly about like historical stuff in my comedy set when I'm talking about teaching. And also the time that these parents thought I was going to convert their kids to Islam. But anyways, that's not there.
That's a good bit. I've seen that one.
You've seen that one. And I worked on it. It's better now. Okay. The way that I like to talk about it is to have kids play a game where they roll dice. And every time they roll dice at a station, every station represents a different section of the Earth, either in the hydrosphere, which is like in the ocean, in the atmosphere, in the geosphere. So they might be either part of a volcanic eruption. They might be part of the magma inside of the Earth. They might be part of like a certain sedimentary layer, or they might be fish they might be part of the biosphere, which would be like either fish in the ocean, plants on the land, animals. And so the tables, the sections would represent like the different areas where carbon dioxide is stored, and they would roll dice to see where they end up. So there's different area, depending on your dice roll, you end up in a different area, and you have to move to that section and roll your dice again. And you keep a log of where you end up. And so what they noticed the first round is that they always end up somewhere inside the Earth, and they stay there for a very long time. They're like trapped inside like fossil fuels most of the time, and they can't escape. And then you go to the post-industrial age version of the game, which is round 2, and then they do the same thing, and they find out that a lot of them end up in the atmosphere. And so that's supposed to help them kind of see like, wow, we're increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Can you imagine the libs of TikTok video about my teacher told me that I was a fish?
They would lose their fucking mind. They'd be like, oh no, the trans agenda.
Right chick has me blocked on Twitter.
One joke that they have about like, oh no, kids are thinking that they're cats. I like, that's so fucking stupid. Hey, those are called furries.
At
right?
least
like,
cats are mammals. Fish? You're trying to give kids gills in this
in this economy?
How dare they?
Wait, actually, no, because if the polar ice caps melt and we're all underwater, kids will need gills. So actually, I've come back around. This is a good idea.
No, all you need is Kevin Costner in a
join
boat.
the orcas in trying to fight billionaires on yachts.
Yo, I have a whole rant on orcas, but I also don't want smoke from them because with my luck, they'll figure out how to get on land and will jump me.
Are you anti-orca? Wait, why would they jump you?
I'm not anti-orca. I just respect black air forces. I put them in the same like place of I put 50 Cent and Kendrick Lamar currently.
Black air forces?
For the listeners at home, my brain just melted.
This is another reference like the dude who made white people. That's Sophia.
Yeah, you're talking about Yakub?
Yeah, put this in the Yakub section where there's a segment of our fans who probably also listen to only Royce the 5'9", who are going to love this. Orcas are nature's black Air Force. They're the type of animal to say, run your pockets, not for actual need or hunger, just for the love of the game of villainy. And with my luck, that fucking leather-bound Nike shoe that's only used with straight backs and black menthols will figure out how to walk on land and beat my ass. So it's a healthy respect.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I do agree that if orcas could smoke cigarettes, they would smoke menthols. So at least there's some agreement there. We have common ground. We can move on.
And we will talk more about cigarettes today. But
yes!
Hell yeah, we will talk about cigarettes. I want to talk about two folks that work for the Cato Institute, but first we should probably explain who the Cato Institute is for people who maybe haven't been paying attention to this stuff as long.
Yeah, definitely not for any of the co-hosts of the show that totally know what that is.
You know everything about the Cato Institute. Mm-hmm. During the 90s, aughts, and 2010s, you find a lot of media on them and their work in spreading disinformation, as well as their ties to the mainstream Republican Party, as well as the Libertarian Party. But I think Trump, being the cult of personality that he is, and having the people that he does in orbit, kind of has pulled a lot of the attention away from think tanks, or at least quite a bit, until Project 2025 fuckery with the Heritage Institute. If you haven't heard of Cato, you might at least be passingly familiar with two of its founders, while the other one probably won't ring any bells and isn't very interesting. The other two are Murray Rothbard and Charles Koch. Rothbard is probably someone that you may know of if you have any academic or personal interest in American libertarianism or, fringe economics. I'm going to use the term libertarianism with big air quotes there because the term was originally invented to refer to left-wing anarchists like anarcho-communists and anarcho-syndicalists by people within that group. And it was, in fact, co-opted by none other than this asshole, Murray Rothbard, to use it to refer to capitalists that want the government to let them do slavery and poison people more readily. And I wish I was less serious about that, but you'll see by the end of the episode that these guys were so serious about it that it gets comically dark. Rothbard also loved one of the villains in our first episode we did with Laura Jadid recently, referring to Joe McCarthy. He also said that he didn't agree with the Civil War, but at least wasn't a revisionist so as to call it something like the War of Northern Aggression. He literally called it the Northern War against slavery. So that's something. He also said that it was bad to fight the war against slavery. So, fuck this guy. He suggested that parents have the right.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah, no, Rothbard sucks. Here's a list of his qualities. He loved Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. He hung out with Holocaust deniers. He supported torture of people in police custody. He wanted to repeal the Civil Rights Act, and he eventually became too wacky for the Cato Institute. He went on to found the Ludwig von Mises Institute, which has hosted such batshit lunatics as Ron Paul, whose career we'll also go over pretty extensively at some point, and Hans Hermann Hoppe, the guy who inspired Curtis Yarvin, the ideological father of a lot of Doge and Peter Thiel and Vance-related fuckery.
So this guy was basically like an Elon Musk bootlicker.
Yeah, but he was the guy that...
Other way around.
Yeah, really.
Elon was licking his boots.
Yeah, like the guy that J.D. Vance is super into, Curtis Yarvin. And if you want to hear more about Curtis Yarvin, there's a really good series on him on Behind the Bastards.
Just listen to it.
I would say, honestly, if you want to hear more about Curtis Yarvin, seek help.
Curtis Yarvin is part of like what they call like neo-reactionary movement, and he kind of inspired all of the Project 2025 stuff. And a lot of the stuff he called one of his big ideas, RAGE, retire all government employees. What he wanted to do was take the American state, how do I describe this? Scrap it for parts and basically replace...
It's like if you break it to the point where you can say that it has lost its ability to function, you can get people much more easily get people on board for privatizing the few things that the state does really well, like Social Security, Medicare, that kind of shit. If you make it so that it doesn't work, you can trick people into being like, okay, yeah, what's your alternative? Oh, it's this thing where you make a lot of money, but oh, sure, whatever. We got to try something.
Yeah. Yarvin took that a step further and wanted to create what's referred to as like techno-feudalism, which is basically like split the United States up into little fiefdoms that are run as corporations. It's a weird level of decentralized privatization that like is beyond what a lot of libertarians talk about.
Yeah. I think I support this idea because this will result in the people rising up and all of them, which I support. Yeah, they think that they think they can get away with this. And it's like, you always hear the question about like the ultra rich who are building these bunkers for like, to survive doomsday. And they're like, well, how do I keep my security guards in line? And it's like, dog, they're going to you and eat you. Like that's if the world ends and you have like, you're one guy and you are trying to control 12 guys that all have guns, they're going to you. So yes, please do techno-feudalism. I endorse this idea.
They're also counting on people to be like sedated in a way. I'm not finding the right word, but I'm gonna use sedated because like I was just watching.
Pacified.
Did you guys see that woman in Idaho in the town hall meeting?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Dragged by some random fucking men, which by the way is an assault and kidnapping charge because they put her in zip ties. Like nobody got up to fucking tase or mace or punch them in the fucking face. I'm so sorry, I'm cursing, but like it's just like how did
Docile
thing?
Docile.
That was the word.
Yeah.
And so like they didn't even get up and do it. Nobody around her did anything. They just let it happen.
Yep.
I would have knocked them the fuck out.
Yep.
Yeah, there's like a certain point, and we're nowhere near it yet. The problem America hasn't fallen apart is entirely because of the availability of credit. Everybody lives on credit one way or another, whether it's home loan, car loan, student loan, or just credit cards. That is the reason why people are unwilling to get out into the streets, is because most people are relatively comfortable still. And it's entirely because of the availability of credit. Once that stops working, that's whenever the whole country's going to fucking explode.
Let's keep diving into it because
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you trying to stay on subject? My bad.
no, I will always appreciate you dragging me off subject. It's the right thing to do. So the other founder of the Cato Institute is Charles Koch. He's a billionaire. He supports a lot of right-wing think tanks and has a history of opposing environmental regulations. And sadly, like me, he's a chemical engineer. Big womp 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 for that one. He is, of course, a Nepo baby. And despite having some good takes on things like federal cannabis prohibition and war on occasion, is tragically one of the reasons we are where we are right now, especially via the Tea Party movement, which is another thing we'll eventually get to. But I'll mention that it's a movement within the Republican Party that really created a space for the right elements and ultimately for Trump himself. There will be a lot of that in this episode in specific because we're going to get to a bit of the meat of how business interests really started aligning with the right-wing media, creating their own forms of media very extensively from the 1980s until now. It's really worth noting here that Charles and his brother David have been funding basically every conservative/libertarian/capitalist cause for the last 40 plus years, and they're one of the chief reasons that our sense of reality is, but that's sort of a story for later and sort of the story we're telling now. So Charles and Murray and some dickhead named Ed Crane started the Cato Institute in 1977, and it's been responsible for just an incredible amount of fuckery on behalf of the petroleum industry and other big polluters. Cato is a think tank dedicated to libertarianism, which you find some okay takes on stuff like weed and war, but the rest is pretty much that they'd like to make sure that your kids can work before their first birthday and that they'll be celebrating the second with a cake that has coloring made from cyanide. Any of you guys heard about these guys before?
Cato
Well, I know
Koch brothers.
Koch brothers, yeah. Because I feel like they were more notable. Like a lot of people were talking about them during the Bush era, and like maybe I'm dating myself there, but
no, I mean it's like one of those things that they haven't. I was gonna say they haven't gone away. One of them has,
sure has.
But like the reality we live in now is kind of the result of people like the Kochs. And I've heard of the Cato Institute. I don't really know as much about it as I do about the Koch brothers, but like the quote unquote conservatives have had a long-term plan to destroy this country. Yeah. And like we are currently living in, we haven't gotten to their full result, but this is what they were trying to do 20 years ago. This is what they were working towards.
Yeah, we're living in their end game.
It does feel very odd that in this long-term plan, you're watching a bunch of people look at like, oh, this is the wide-scale damage that's going to be done, and still be like, yeah, we're fine with this.
Because they're still comfortable. They still have a level of comfort that they're not willing to let go of.
I guess the thing I'm asking is like, how much is enough, right? Because like there's points in time where I think about like how much money would it take for me like to just quit everything and just be like, cool, I can just do the vibe out. I do have the number in my head. It's a number I've thought painstakingly about, but eventually it's just like comes a point in time where like, bro, you could live any type of like the money they have, the money and influence they have, they could literally do most of the enjoyable things in life to the point like, damn, y'all just not buying packs of bacon and throwing parties every day? Like, what's driving this kind of maniacal and evil pedal push? Does that make sense?
It's definitely psychological. Like whenever people reach this kind of level of wealth and power, they convince themselves that they got there because of merit. When in most cases, it's just like their parents were wealthy to start with, but also like they can't accept in any way that luck or privilege had anything to do with that, because then they would feel unworthy. They would do like the things that we do with fucking imposter syndrome. So what they do is they convince themselves that the reason they're so powerful is because they are geniuses. So you can see this clearly with Elon Musk. Like that motherfucker got lucky in tech 20 years ago and is conning his way through the world ever since. And like at no point can he admit, oh, I just got lucky once and it's snowballed from there. So once you start convincing yourself, I am where I am because I'm a genius, then you're like, well, what else would I do? Since I already clearly know so much. And
partially disagree. I don't think that the people that are billionaires and are super ultra rich, I don't think they know that they got there by merit. I think they may or may not know about their privilege. That's not even, I mean, I think they know that they're guilty. That's what drives them, because what are the things that they invest in? Prisons, military, police budgets. They're paying for mercenaries, essentially. They're paying for people to protect their wealth, right? They know that they didn't earn it. Even if they don't know it consciously, at least on a very subconscious level, they know that they have stolen it. It does not belong to them, and they need to keep it away from the people that are trying to take it from them. Even though it's hordes and hordes of money, they can't let go because they know that they're guilty.
Yeah.
I think subconsciously you are totally correct, but like they're lying to themselves. But
Right.
like they when they said, no, I earned everything I have, I worked hard for this, they don't know they're lying. Like
Right.
they've convinced themselves
They've
of this.
convinced themselves. Yeah, they
But
believe
yeah,
they're
subconsciously, you're totally right. They know there's no way these motherfuckers sleep well at night, because if they did, you wouldn't see Elon Musk being like, look at my chainsaw, you guys. Seriously.
Look
Yeah.
at my
That is-
child. I have a child, guys. Please.
Yeah, limb from limb.
That's
I
not a
have
guy who
child.
feels good about all of his choices. Like, come on.
Yeah. While I was digging through information about Cato to write this episode and their role in climate disinformation, two names kind of stood out to me specifically: Stephen J. Malloy and Patrick Michaels. And I wasn't super aware of these guys' contributions before. I had seen them as Fox News commentators. And like, for anybody that's listening that I haven't explained this to at some point, like, I've been following this stuff for a really long time. Like, I grew up as an evangelical, and I got out of that church very early and began having an obsession with how people come to bad ideas and stick with them. And so I watched a lot of Fox News for a lot of years trying to figure it out. All it did was piss me off. So now we're here. But these guys, Stephen J. Malloy and Patrick Michaels, they will pop up as Fox contributors and other things. But I want to talk about Malloy's case second, because his is funnier and weirder, and he wrote the most unhinged article I've ever sent someone. I've never gotten that kind of a laughing reaction from someone before. So for Patrick Michaels, this guy was a climatologist with some decent credentials. He was research professor in environmental science at the University of Virginia and worked there since 1980. He had a bachelor's in biology, a master's in biology as well from the University of Chicago, and a PhD in ecological climatology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. By the early 1990s, he was writing articles in the Washington Times and other conservative rags to reject the scientific consensus on basically anything. This guy is a professional contrarian. He started by denying ozone depletion, which is one of those things where we dodged a bullet because so many people stopped using ozone depleting chemicals like CFCs. And Michaels has written a number of books on the topic of climate change, and I'll let Andrew read the titles.
Sound and Fury, the science and politics of global warming. Meltdown, the predictable distortion of global warming by scientists, politicians, and the media. Shattered Consensus, the true state of global warming. Climate of extremes, global warming science they don't want you to know. Climate coup, the global warming's invasion of our government and our lives. Lukewarming, the new climate science that changes everything. And the satanic gases.
Yeah, that last one's so fucking goofy. I can't believe he named a book The Satanic Gases. I died when I was doing the research for this.
He was running out of ideas on that one. You can't convince me otherwise.
That's definitely his best work. Also, time out. I've never really tried to speak in a voice like that before. This is going to sound crazy.
Great.
I have a bit of a newfound respect for Alex Jones. that hurt. I read like fucking less than a paragraph's worth of words, and I'm like not doing great.
You were the best monster truck announcer for conservative books ever.
Thank you.
Yeah, but all but one of those was published by the Cato Institute, where he was the quote-unquote director for the study of science. In books like Lukewarming, he does accept the fact that climate change is happening, but tries to dial down the perceptions of the severity of it, as well as the fact that his beloved petroleum companies that paid him so much money had anything to do with it. Michaels also owned a consulting firm called New Hope Environmental Service, which he used to do the exact same kind of work, and also consulted with the Cato Institute as this entity at various times. According to PR Watch, just for the years 2006 and 2007, he was paid over $240,000 by the Cato Institute in his capacity as New Hope Environmental Services, which, mind you, like, he's the only fucking guy that works there. And as far as who else paid him, it's a bit of a mystery.
Now, I wonder, a lot of the anti-climate fucking kind of people, they always say, oh, these scientists that say global warming is real, they're just doing it to get paid off. I wonder how many of those climate change scientists, I wonder how their finances compare to this guy's, you know? It's like, let's see.
From a Mother Jones article in 2010 by Kate Shepard.
In 2007, Michaels was scheduled to appear as an expert witness on behalf of a challenge by Green Mountain, Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge, and the Association of International Manufacturers to emission standards in Vermont. The auto industry's lawyers planned to put Michaels on the stand as an expert witness who would question the scientific finding that greenhouse gas emissions are warming the planet. But it soon became clear that the lawyers defending Vermont's law were going to ask Michaels about the clients of his advocacy science consulting firm, New Hope Environmental Services. Michaels had never made a list of his clients public, and he refused to do so now, arguing that it was a confidential matter. The judge disagreed and ruled that Michaels' clients were a visible area of cross-examination. I understand that maybe it's a little embarrassing, said Judge Williams K. Sessions III, but it's not highly confidential information. In a rare move, the auto dealers pulled Michael off their witness list. In an affidavit, Michael stated that New Hope was his primary source of income, and being forced to reveal its clients would imperil my livelihood. He emphasized that the sole reason he did not testify was a concern that the trial testimony would result in the loss of confidentiality for the New Hope information. See.
It's kind of crazy to call the fucking firm that you've set up to deny climate change New Hope Information.
Yeah, New Hope Environmental Services. Like, they're talking about environmental services. So you would think, and that's like from the last episode, we had the Global Climate Coalition, which you would think is a bunch of people that are trying to help out with climate change. And instead, there are a bunch of people that are trying to help out with climate change.
They love doing this. They always make these groups that represent nothing. In fact, the opposite of the American Freedom Coalition, like people who are actively trying to find like anti-terrorist bullshit, but they're in fact like stepping on everybody's civil rights while they're doing it. Go same game.
I think it's hilarious that he's just like, I cannot tell you who I represent or else they will not trust me. This is confidential. The judge is like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? He's like, I said it's confidential. He's basically like, yo, you want me to snitch? People will not like us after this. That's the point.
Acting like it's fucking HIPAA out here.
Yeah.
Has anybody seen it's the online meme where it's a goose? It's like a guy saying like the Civil War was fought over states' rights, and it's the goose is like,
state rights
for what?
Which rights?
Yeah, which rights? This is what this feels like. Like, oh, I have a big client list. Who are the clients? Nah, nigga, tell us who the clients are.
Yeah. The article goes on to say that a few folks he had consulted for, air quotes, big time there, had been revealed over the years, such as the Western Fuels Association, which is a business group for coal and fuel transportation, the Edison Electric Institute, and the Intermountain Rural Electric Association. All of these gigs were greater than $25,000, with the largest being $100,000, and all of it was in order to spread climate change disinformation. You'll be happy to know that the state of Vermont went on to win the case over the emission standards, and the guy who replaced Michaels testifying there ended up admitting that the source of CO2 in the atmosphere is the burning of fossil fuels. So, every now and again, something good happens. And speaking of, Michaels died in 2022, 3 years after leading the Cato Institute, after they decided they didn't want to do anything.
Vaxxed?
I don't know.
Myocarditis.
Jesus
I don't
Christ.
need to work today. Myocarditis.
He definitely had Moderna.
But
no, this guy got Johnson & Johnson for sure.
yeah, now that he's dead in our story, I want to talk about the person who engaged in so much more evil here. And honestly, reading about this guy while writing this was a goddamn roller coaster ride. So Stephen Malloy also had science degrees in natural science and public health up to his master's degree, but turned heel and got a JD from the University of Baltimore afterwards. Stevie then went to work for the National Environmental Policy Institute, which was founded in 1993 by two congressmen, a Democrat and a Republican, which sounds really cool, except it was very explicitly getting its funding from Occidental Petroleum, other petroleum industry companies, and notably the U.S. government during the tail end of the Clinton administration when it received a grant for $2 million from your tax money. He also worked for a PR company called APCO & Associates, representing Philip Morris on what they called the Advancement of Sound Science Center, or TASC, which usually people don't use the in the acronym, but fuck it. It's Task, which was formed to deny that secondhand smoke was a carcinogen and to discredit the EPA. And listen, I'm a former smoker. I would smoke forever if it didn't cause cancer and COPD, but it does.
Allegedly.
It's one of those things that we all know. It's been very well explored in data over 100 years, and we don't need to rehash that kind of thing. But if we ever get something that stops cancer and COPD from happening, then I will go back to smoking a pack a day. I promise.
First of all, you fucking better. Second of all, do we know for sure? I know plenty of people that smoke cigarettes that don't have Cop D, okay?
I just don't believe in government hoaxes. Birds aren't real either.
Look, if you stop checking people's lungs after they die, you won't know that they died of lung cancer. Like, if somebody dies, just leave them be. Don't look in there. That's gross. What are you doing? It's kind of weird. Honestly, you're kind of weird. Looking in somebody's lungs. Have you no shame?
But yeah, APCO created multiple think tanks and worked with local activists that they funded to really kind of build the technique of astroturfing that ultimately led to things like the one that I promised we'd talk about earlier. That's not today, the Tea Party. Task and APCO circulated a lot of information in newspapers and magazines in a program run by none other than Malloy. Malloy became a Fox News science columnist because, of course, he did. And of course, that's where we were going to go with this. And that's how a lot of this work really became mainstreamed. There's two charts here that will be showing up on Beehive in the show notes by the time you're listening to this, but we're going to describe them because I think the story they tell is important. My thoughts here are that as Fox News started to really cement itself as a major media force, you start to see a light decline in Republican trust in science. And really, once you enter the Obama era, Republicans have had enough of science and really facts entirely. I'm going to share this. You guys have the notes, but she doesn't.
It's a graph.
Look at this graph. It is,
Isn't it neat?
This is primetime viewership in thousands by year starting in 1998. It shows Fox News and MSNBC, and the MSNBC part isn't necessarily relevant, but like you start to see Fox News really take off in 2000 and in 2001, around 9/11, they had a pretty massive incline. They started airing in either 96 or 98, but really, really took off in the early aughts. And I'm going to show you.
Something here real quick?
Yes, of course, please.
I vividly remember like watching Fox News like regularly, and like when I was a kid, because for homework, for current event stuff,
Yeah.
and just like generally with my dad, like whatever. I didn't understand much of it, just except Princess Diana died. But then after 2001, after 9/11 happened, it wasn't just the like propaganda about terrorism and stuff and brown people in general. There was also something that changed. It became infotainment. I noticed that I didn't have a word for it back then, but I remember I'm like, why are they acting like friends all of a sudden? Like it was like a sudden change that happened over time, like around 2002, 2003. That was really strange. And I think that's what turned it into more like, oh, it's infotainment. It became a little bit more of an attention grabber than like just the news.
Yeah, that is absolutely how that worked. And like they've had a couple like small periods of decline in viewership, and like there's actually one that exists like slightly off of this chart in 2021 and late 2020 because they came out and said that Trump didn't win the 2020 election, and that absolutely backfired for them. Lol.
I would say the most surprising thing about this chart, where again we're looking at viewership of Fox News or whatever, is that there is a slight uptick in 2008, 2009, but nowhere near as much as I would think. With Obama becoming the president, it would break the chart.
I think a lot of the people that were in that position to already be listening to Fox News were kind of already there. And like, that's why you have that downtick in 2009, because they start really going hard on the birther thing. And a lot of people that were like more polite conservatives were like, I don't know if we should do that. Like even John McCain was like, I'm put off by this.
John McCain was weird in a way that I did not expect. And maybe it could be like the romanticization of him that after he's like died. But it's just like, wow, you really believe in like sensibility in the system. That's kind of cute. I don't know. Like,
John McCain,
like,
famous for saying, he's not a Muslim, he's a good guy.
Yeah, that was John McCain's response when somebody was like, what if Obama wins? He's a Muslim. And he was like, he's not a Muslim or an Arab. He's a decent man. And it's like, oh, fuck. McCain's just one of those old-timey racists that has to be polite.
All right. Does anybody here
We stand a
Justice League
respectful
Unlimited?
racist.
Did
No,
anybody
we
remember
don't.
Justice League Yeah. Did you think we love polite racists?
No, I said we stand a respectful racist. Get it right.
All right, if anybody remembers the episode of Justice League Unlimited where the Justice League goes back in time and it's like pre-segregation, there's like a flashlight hero who's running next to the Green Lantern, the best Green Lantern, John Stewart, and John's black, like a very black man, and the speedster's running near him and he just goes, "You're a testament to your people, son." And it's, yeah, you guys are old. Sophia, I never said this.
I forgot about that. I've seen that show. Like,
it's
I
like
know what you're talking about.
For context, this is like a kid's show back when like writers had a lot more respect for their audience and got to like weave it. Annam, I feel so bad. The look on your face is like, what the fuck? It's truly like one of those, not you, but like a teacher gets like a black student who's like walking in and like talking about basketball, and the black student answers the question correctly, and the teacher goes, "Oh my God, you're so articulate."
Right.
It's like, oh God, you're the lady from the Blind Side.
Was the context that they went back in time though, so that way they were trying to be accurate about that?
It's being accurate, which is like very good. It's just hilarious. This is a show meant for at most 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it, like he says it, but it's just one of those like, this is so accurate and painfully funny because everyone, I don't know single like minority or like person who's like outside the dominant culture who doesn't have a friend whose grandparent is just like, "Oh, I'm going to be polite to this outsider because I'm doing the good thing." Like Andrew said, we stand a polite racist. No, we don't, folks. No, we do not.
I mean, I said it apparently.
We've got this second chart. It's how much people of specific political alignments, being Democrat, Republican, and Independent, feel about environmental spending. And so that one starts at 1973. But if you started at 1998, where the other one starts, Democrats have been kind of just consistently wanting more environmental spending. Independents are kind of right in the middle, like a little bit of up and down, but it doesn't look like it's associated with anything in specific. And Republicans kind of peaked in like the late 80s, and it's just been a steady decline since then.
Precipitous.
When was Chuck Norris like popular? Was he 80s or 90s?
90s.
Eternally? What the?
Well, no, because I know that Chuck Norris, big environmental guy.
He gripped to the right though?
He did, yeah.
But he's always had like that tinge of, you're an American values guy. Not like fully as bad as Clint Eastwood. Also, Clint Eastwood's new movie fucking sucks. Just gonna get that off my dome real quick. But Chuck Norris, I think, was like a really big like environmental advocate for like, it's the only planet we got, but then also made a series of kind of offensive commercials regarding it.
Well, like there was a major difference. There was a part of conservatism that was pro conserving the planet, but like there was always a contradiction within that like they said we want clean water and clean air. They didn't actually want to do anything to regulate the fossil fuel industry. It was just a contradiction the whole time. They wanted two things that are incompatible.
It's always like they want the thing that's good for society, but not if it also benefits minorities and Black people.
Ding, ding,
like
ding.
they want it, but if it offers good benefits for everybody, no, just for them.
Yeah. And did you ever think that maybe the Democrats and left-leaning people are the real racists by not forcing the minorities to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and challenge themselves because they don't think that they could? And yes, that's a real argument I've heard from somebody.
I know you asked Annam, but if I feel that way, should I say so? Or all that's to say that these two charts showing an increase in Fox viewership and a decrease in believing in climate science, there seems to be a strong correlation.
Damn right. On Malloy still, an article on Mother Jones shows that he receives a good chunk of change from Exxon. Favorite villain of the story, between 2000 and 2003, he received $90,000 donations from them to the two nonprofits that he operates out of his home. One of Malloy's favorite things to do is refer to things as junk science, but his support for industries like tobacco and oil were nearly endless, and he stayed a correspondent through Fox News from 2002 to 2009. He was a member of Trump's first transition team, and in between those two times, he wrote some more articles for the Washington Times, wrote a bit more for Cato, and published a book called Green Hell: How Environmentalists Plan to Control Your Life and What You Can Do to Stop Them. And he was listed as Director of External Policy and Strategy at the Murray Energy Corporation. In 2018, he created another activist shareholder group that was literally just called Burn More Coal, which he started with Fred Palmer from the Heartland Institute, which also was coincidentally founded by tobacco company Philip Morris and former Cato Institute director David H. Padden, to make secondhand smoke seem like not an issue.
It's not an issue.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
It's not an issue unless you're dying.
I'm sorry if you were offended by my cigarette smoke. Like, that's
I'm not.
honestly,
I think it's beautiful. I wish I could have more of it, but it will kill me.
I'm just built different.
But
thank you.
In 2017 and 2018, Malloy spoke at the Heartland Institute's America First Energy Conference, which is referring to Donald Trump's idiotic tagline for himself, but I'll let Devon read you their conference description.
The purpose of this event is to promote and expand energy freedom in the United States, outlined in President Donald Trump's bold American First Energy Plan, a proposal first released during the 2016 presidential campaign. The president's plan marks a decisive change in the direction from the Obama administration's war on fossil fuels and the focus theory of catastrophic man-caused climate change.
And honestly, I wish I had all day to talk about Malloy because his work was impactful in all of this, and I mean it in the most derogatory way. He's a guy that rode the disinformation wave from working for Philip Morris and gas companies to spouting their lies on Fox News all the way into the Trump administration, which may be one of the greatest purveyors of disinformation in U.S. history. And that's saying something because this country is all kinds of fucked up and always has been. But I think my favorite example, and where we'll leave the episode, is an article he wrote for Fox News published on September 14th, 2001. Remember how last episode we had an article about how the smog in the 1960s was comparable to 9/11 related air pollution in New York?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. This is probably the only take that I've seen that advocated for a position that would have made that worse. I'm going to let Andrew read a little slice or two of this article.
Asbestos fibers in the air and rubble following the collapse of the World Trade Center is adding to fears in the aftermath of Tuesday's terrorist attack. The true tragedy in the asbestos story, though, is the lives that might have been saved but for 1970s era hysteria about asbestos. This is Mark Wahlberg saying, like, if I had put the asbestos in those towers, it wouldn't have gone down like that.
It is.
Another section is, until 30 years ago, asbestos was added to flame retardant sprays used to insulate steel building materials, particularly floor supports. This insulation was intended to delay the steel from melting in the case of fire by up to 4 hours. They are literally saying,
yeah, it's so comically fucking evil. Like, he's like, okay, 9/11 was bad, but what if also less people died up front and everyone got mesothelioma long term?
Well, I mean, if everybody gets it, then it's not mesothelioma, it's usothelioma.
Usothelioma, exactly. I mean, they tried as best asbestos they could.
Shut the fuck up. I see.
That's going to be in the preview for the episode.
I was pretty happy with usothelioma to the point that I was queuing up the fucking Gal Gadot Imagine video, like saying we're all in this together. And then you fucking tried as best as you could. God damn it. God damn it. I am quitting comedy.
Please don't. We need
I was never in comedy. I can't hang with y'all.
Yeah. So
hanging right now.
just to end this, he goes on to say,
end it all.
yeah, seriously, after that, he goes on to say that we may be, quote unquote, paying a horrible price for junk science fueled asbestos hysteria. And the article closes by saying he's the publisher of junkscience.com and an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute, because of course it fucking does.
Junkscience.com. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, he was making fun of other people's scientific process, calling everything junk science. And then he's like, I love secondhand smoke. I love asbestos. I love climate change. And I don't mean climate change to stop it from happening. I mean, I like when the climate gets hotter and we ruin the fucking planet.
No more cold in February.
Let's fucking go, dude. I got all these shorts and I can't wear them half the year.
I got all these crop tops and I can't wear it. I have to cover up with layers and I hate it.
The tummy needs to be freed. The tummy, we cannot keep the tummy under wraps.
Yeah. I'm going to wear more crop tops this year.
Hell yeah.
Doing a lot of work.
Hell yeah.
I just love that it's joke science, it's fake news. There's always some like cute little coin term that these right-wing conservative folks use to justify all the shit they want to do. Like I love that for them. It's so cute.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I was good with words like that. I try as best as I can.
It's so funny that they make it work in that way. And like, but this is really what I've been trying to get at, is that like a lot of these guys came through Fox News, became mainstreamed. But all of that in the earlier days, it was coming from the American Petroleum Institute and some of these other groups. But then those were industry groups. Like it was obvious who was doing the disinformation. And so they had to obfuscate. And what they did is they started working with right-wing think tanks like the Cato Institute and like what is it, APCO and Burn More Coal and Task and all of these other ones, Advancement of Sound Science Center and all this shit. Like these
the
guys.
Association for Making the Surface of the Earth Similar to the Surface of the Sun. It's a bit of a mouthful, but honestly, it's hot.
That is the new thing we need to drop.
It's like, when you're a young comedian, you want to make it somehow, you want to get some more stage time. So you like work at the club, and then it's a shitty job, but you get some more stage time than you would if you weren't working at the club. It's like that, but for people who are like a revolving door for like these fossil fuel companies and, weapon manufacturing, whatever it is. With us, we're talking about climate change. So I want to stick to that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then they have investments, and then we have politicians who like are paid by investors. It's the revolving door thing where it's like, okay, they're either being paid or working for or coming through working for that kind of institution, coming on the news and acting like they're an unbiased party. And then also them and also politicians having like investments in these things.
I mean, it's just like I was saying, like you look at, they call the fucking thing junkscience.com or like all these fucking bullshit names. These people know that there is so much distrust of institutions that they actually don't even really have to try that hard anymore to sell any alternative explanation for what's going on in the world. If their goal is to cash in on that distrust, they don't have to fucking think it through that much. People are so desperate to believe anything other than the lies that they are being sold from the left and the right, at least of the mainstream of what's going on in this country. And if you want to hear more about me losing my fucking mind in regard to the way that media has destroyed public trust, you can check out our Patreon, where I think I talked uninterrupted for like 5.5 minutes straight. I was very angry. So,
we let him cook.
I think I said a sentence that had 5 words in a row that started with the letter C.
You did, yes.
No, it was like five like multi-syllable, like 5-syllable words. You were cooking. Like it was a lecture.
Junkscience.com is where I would go in middle school. But
Either go to Patreon or go to the Patreon or go to junkscience.com.
Yeah. But no, seriously, if you want to check out our Patreon, it's patreon.com/the Crumbling Podcast. And Annam, do you want to plug anything before we go?
Follow me on Instagram at Annam Laughs, ANNAM. That's Apple Nancy Nancy Apple Mary, and then the word laughs, plural. And yeah, just I need more followers. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Andrew, you want to plug anything? Devon, anybody?
I'm stealing this from the co-host of my other podcast, The Worst Week Yet, but what I would like to plug is a fork into a toaster.
That's also good. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I always end up? I just like to plug that it's hard being on podcasts with 2 fucking comedians because I never have anything witty to say. I just rant. Fuck! See y'all next time, listeners.
Bye.
Bye.
Hell yeah.
Bye.
I'd like to plug butts and end episode.